John is down here just listening. We don't talk. Picture one.
You cover both of my time. Okay, I'll use it later. You teach on Tuesday.
I actually used the gavel there. All right, good evening. It's 5:30. We have our public hearing today, or this evening, for our text amendment land development and zoning regulation waivers and text amendment R7 district maximum lot area coverage. Todd, I know you're here. Thank you for being here. Would you like to add to our public hearing? So, thank you.
I'm here mainly to answer questions. The first item I believe that we'll be taking up is the issue of the waivers. And this came about, there are various places in the zoning ordinance and the land development regulations in particular where staff has been afforded the ability to waive or relax certain standards based on certain conditions, and in an effort to provide a check and balance, for lack of a better term, that we thought it was a good idea for those circumstances to require two qualified people to make that judgment. And that's what we did. We just went back through and added to where I'd say a good many of them fell under my responsibility, a lot of them under the city engineer. Benji had some, zoning administrator had some, but everywhere, Chief Campos did, but everywhere we could find, and there may be some we missed, that we put two people on there. So it's pretty straightforward, and this passed the Planning Commission unanimously in October. It doesn't look like there's a lot of people wanting to comment on
Todd?
I do have a question. I'll wait for the comment. Anyone else? I guess not. So the only thing in it that I might have a concern about is that what happens if the two parties don't agree? So a lot of times there was consultation with, coordination with, but it's not real clear if the planning director disagrees with the second party. What is the process then? Is it a consensus between the two? Is it you, the director, ultimately has the answer? Because I would predict that there will be some times there's a difference of opinion. I don't remember the word, but I think the word used, I think, was in conjunction with. And there were other times it was the police chief along with. So my real concern was what does conjunction mean if there's a difference of opinion?
We both have to agree, and if you don't agree, does the standard is not waived.
Okay, so I think we might want to specify that because I know certainly what makes sense in 2021 with context and history can lose its meaning in 2025 when only John was still in council. So I don't know how you get that. I don't know how you write that, but maybe consensus, maybe some clarifying term that they go down with.
To your point, what I'd like to suggest, and if you're comfortable with it, I can add this before we bring it before you. One of the things we also did was want to, in our general ordinance, section 19613, we added a kind of a statement about waivers, and that waivers had to have a written request and a justification for it, so it was not subjective. And what I will suggest we do, Fran, is in that section, clarify that that in order for a waiver to be granted, both parties must agree.
That's all. Thank you.
And I'll add that, so that'll be the only change so far that I'll make when I bring this to you guys for your first reading on the 20th.
Todd, do you want to go over the second part as well? And if we have any calls, Rick will let us know.
Sure.
That's okay.
So the second ordinance came about, Councilman Brookover raised a point that I think was a good one and had not been fully considered when we wrote the standards for R7. And his question was about lot coverage. And that what we did was we drew heavily on Patrick Square and Clemson Cottages, both properties or developments that have on average between 4,000 and 8,000 square foot lots. R7 is obviously 7,000 square foot minimum lot. And we took I think 10 examples, 5 from each, and then identified how much lot coverage they had, what was typical for them. And we came out to, it was a little over 50%. Now currently, a property of an acre or more is capped out at a 30% coverage. An acre or less, the way the language is currently written, is 40%. And that what we recommended was that for R7 it be 60%, so we would be consistent with the standards we have. This allows for a footprint of around 2,200 square feet for a base footprint, so you can still get some size out of it, and that would include typically a garage as well. This too passed unanimously from the Planning Commission when it was advanced at their November meeting. And I'll be happy to answer any questions and thank Councilman Brookover. I think it's a good idea to have this just to prevent somebody from building wall to wall or something like that, which is not our intention.
So the 60%, so let's just use 7,000, that's 4,200 square feet. So does that include, you said the house, or like you said, a 2,200 square foot footprint, plus the garage?
Plus like the driveway.
No, because that's what I asked, does it include pavement?
Yes, correct.
So all the paved surfaces are included in that 42, okay.
Lot coverage is any impervious surface. That could be a swimming pool, a patio, a storage shed, your house, your garage, your driveway, all those things combined.
Okay. So your view on that is roughly you got a 2,200 square foot first floor footprint, essentially, without the garage.
Correct. And then we use some averages. Most of these lots are pretty shallow. So but they do have a 25-foot front setback, so you need to have at least 250 square feet of driveway leading up to your garage. Most cases, your driveway is a little bit larger. A lot of them have double garages, and so then you have a sidewalk, you have a little patio in the back, a storage shed. It starts to add up. But you still ended up with 40% pervious surface, open space, if you will.
So remind me, so on Patrick Square, that's got to be more than 40% coverage.
They were averaging, they are, but that's a planned development, so they're not.
I understand that, but I'm asking for context, so that is part of it.
Those averaged around the 40 and 50% range for most of them. The highest was 67% lot coverage at Patrick Square.
So like all the houses on sites are about 50%?
Yeah, that was our average when we took all of those, I think the 10 that we had, which were a mix, because they weren't all 7,000 square foot lots, that they were hovering in that 52, 54%. The reason we bumped it up to 60% is that the idea of R7 is to increase density and to allow people to have a normal house, and accoutrements, the amenities, if you will, storage shed and patio, but just on a smaller lot. Well, mathematically, that's going to mean you're going to have greater lot coverage.
That's how we for Patrick Square for perspective, that the intent for the lot size might be the same, but the bulk of the house, as you were saying.
You might have people do things like bigger patios and stuff like that on this because they'll be, Patrick Square. I don't think you have much of an opportunity for outdoor spaces that might become coverage as well, where these,
Right.
And we have on occasion had people who actually were bumping up against their maximum lot coverage and resolved that through pervious paving. They'd have a gravel patio instead of a concrete one, and they put in pervious paving for their driveway and things like that. But we have held Not many, because most people, it's a pretty reasonable standard, and to me, the fact that you don't have a lot of people having to figure out a way around it means that you probably are anywhere in your sweet spot. But we have had folks, that needed a little bit more.
Do we have anybody who I may have forgotten this. Do we have anybody who's applying for this? Who's interested in this?
Not yet. We had a candidate, but he wanted to move fast on it, and he wasn't sure he wanted to be the guinea pig for R7. And so, but right now we don't have anybody who's applied. There is a development that has been discussed on a kind of a peripheral level that they're interested in it, but I haven't been engaged with them in probably 5 weeks, or 4 or 5 weeks. So, but right now no one has applied.
Remind me of where on front setback you can go from 25 to 15 in R7, RM1, 2, 3. Because the footnote's not in here. Too lazy to look it up right now.
I'm sorry.
So on the front setback on
right.
RM7, RM1, 2, 3,
right.
4, it has 25/15 as a front setback.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, that footnote is that it's 25 feet unless you have a an alley loaded parking, in which case it's 15 foot. We were trying to encourage not having everybody's driveways and garages facing the street, but to do that, we gave them that additional 10 feet on the back side. So that is the same end note, and we probably should include that when we present this so anybody can see that. It is in the ordinance, but I will make sure that footnote, as well as the structure height footnote, needs to be put in there too.
Because, there is, the ideal distance to front porch for, it's like 15 to 20 feet, right? As opposed to 25, if you want to kind of create, community feel.
Yeah, I know, like...
Not have, visors like Fran McGuire hiding in their backyards.
At Patrick Square, they kind of took a different approach, and they have what's called a build-to line. You have to build, and most of theirs is 12 feet. And that one of the other things, the reason it's 25 and R12 and R20 is that a lot of people use the front of their house for parking, and that so we wanted to push that back a little bit so we didn't have all these cars up on the street.
Yeah. I get it. But maybe if there are other exceptions, like if there were side garages or rear garages, I agree 100%. But you don't want 15 feet, 3 cars jammed into the driveway.
When we were setting this public hearing, I just about said, I think we could do both of these if we started at 6, but sure as I said that, we'd have a room full of people and regret it. But any other questions?
For taking us through.
No, again, I think it's a good idea. And I will make those changes so when I'm assuming these will go forward for first reading for the 20th, that I'll make the amendment, Fran, that you requested, and I'll put the footnote notations in here, Bob, for the R7.
Thank you, Todd. Any other questions? Rick, I send no calls, but if anybody wants to call in, 653-9886, 653-9886. And we'll give it, it's almost 6:45, we'll give it 5 more minutes and we'll close it. Thank you again, Todd. We're thinking about you and your family. All right. So at 5:45, we'll give it to 5:50. Just to make sure.
is actually a little bit better. Like we're not going off the cliff that we anticipated. It's kind of, it's going to be more of a
Okay, it's 5:50. Rick has some calls. All right, thank you everyone for coming early. We'll have our regular city council meeting at 6:30.